In the vast expanse of Greek mythology, the gods' powers are almost limitless, and every action they take can alter the very fabric of the world. When discussing the topic of the strongest god, many people bring up Poseidon, the god of the sea. However, when this topic arises among mythology enthusiasts, it is often accompanied by heated debates. Some believe that Poseidon's power is unrivaled and that he ranks among the top gods of Mount Olympus, while others argue that his combat prowess is far inferior to that of Zeus and Athena. So why is Poseidon often seen as losing in these divine rivalries to Zeus and Athena? Is he truly just a god with a great reputation but little real power? Or is it possible that the great feats of his divine legacy conceal a force far more powerful than we can imagine? Let's delve into the world of Greek mythology and explore Poseidon's strength and deeds, to see if this sea god is as turbulent and unpredictable as the waves, or if he holds an absolute power that surpasses all other gods. Dear friends, tonight's story will take you into the boundless ocean, where we will explore the mysterious blue world alongside Poseidon, the god of the seas. Poseidon, who rules over the ocean, storms, and earthquakes, possesses immeasurable strength, and every wave he commands can rise to monumental heights. Can you imagine how he battles the heavens and the earth amidst the roar of the ocean? In tonight's story, Poseidon will guide us through his legendary feats, the enemies he has challenged, and the lesser-known heroic deeds. Perhaps you will be awed by his power, or moved by the wisdom that lies behind his actions. And do you too have your own courage and dreams, like Poseidon, to face the vast ocean and set sail with bravery? What I'm curious about is, if you could have the same power as Poseidon, what would you want to do with it? Would you rule the seas, or change the world? Or perhaps you have a different, more unique wish? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section, whether it's your city coordinates or your special wish. Let's discuss and interact here, and perhaps in your sharing, we may discover another version of Poseidon. Tonight, you are not alone. Under the same sky in different cities, we will all fall asleep to the story of Poseidon, the sea god. On this peaceful night, let us drift into the deep sea with Poseidon's power and into a sweet dream. Under the protection of Gaia, the Mother Earth, Poseidon and his siblings once lived carefree lives. However, this tranquility was violently shattered by their father, Cronus. A terrifying prophecy loomed over Cronus's mind like a dark cloud. Your children will overthrow your rule. The god of time could not tolerate any threat, so one by one, he swallowed his own children, sealing them forever in the cold darkness of his belly. In the darkness, Poseidon could neither feel the warmth of the sun nor hear the murmur of the sea. He struggled, he raged, but in the face of his father's boundless power, he was unable to resist. He did not despair. In the stillness of the dark, Poseidon held on to the belief that a moment of change would come, and that one day, he and his siblings would once again see the light of day. Finally, the prophecy came to pass. The youngest brother, Zeus, managed to escape with the protection of their mother Rhea and grew to become a mighty god in a hidden cave. His resolve burned like molten lava, vowing to save his siblings and end their father's tyranny. One day, Zeus used his wit and courage to earn Cronus's trust, poisoning him and making him vomit up all the children he had swallowed. Poseidon was reborn from Cronus's belly. When he first opened his eyes, he saw the steadfast gaze of Zeus and the protective love of Mother Earth. A surge of anger and gratitude swelled within him. Gripping his weapon tightly, he vowed to avenge the suffering of the past. United, his siblings launched an epic war against their father, the Titanomachy. As Cronus's roar was subdued by Zeus's clever tactics, Poseidon was freed from the prison of eternal darkness. The moment he was spat out, his feet touched solid ground, his body cold but brimming with power. When he opened his eyes for the first time, what he saw was not the cruelty of the world, but the determined eyes of Zeus and the loving gaze of Gaia. In that moment, his heart swelled with emotion. The years of imprisonment rose like a tidal wave in his mind, a mixture of pain, anger, and resentment, all transformed into the blazing fire of vengeance. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had once been powerless against Cronus's cruelty, now filled with strength. As he clenched his fists, his knuckles whitened with fury, and a single thought consumed him: no longer a prisoner of my father, but the master of my destiny. The fires of battle were about to ignite. The Cyclopes, great craftsmen who had suffered under Cronus's rule, had forged a weapon of unparalleled power for Poseidon, the trident. When Poseidon took hold of the trident, he felt a resonance unlike any before, as if the weapon and his soul were bound together. "This is your instrument of fate," one of the Cyclopes, Briareus, whispered, his voice like thunder. "It carries the will of the sea, and it holds the power of destruction. Use it to break your chains and take back the world that belongs to you." Poseidon grasped the trident, the cold touch of its metal making his hand tremble slightly, but his heart remained steadfast. He swung it, and the air rang with the sound of howling winds, as if the sea itself was cheering him on. A grim smile played at his lips. "Cronus, your time is over." The battle horns blared, and the world descended into unprecedented chaos. Cronus summoned his Titan army, while Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades led the freed Olympian gods in defiance. This was not merely a war, but a clash of fates, a battle between the old order and the new world. On the battlefield, Poseidon's trident gleamed with cold brilliance. Each time he swung it, the ocean roared from the horizon, like a furious beast, tearing apart and swallowing the Titan forces. His roar echoed across the battlefield, unstoppable as a tsunami. He was not fighting merely for revenge. Poseidon knew that only by overthrowing Cronus could he claim a future that truly belonged to him. Each attack was filled with power and resolve, and each defense displayed his wisdom and composure. Amidst the chaos, he was not only a fearless warrior, but also a shrewd commander. However, the battle was not without its challenges. Faced with the wrath of the Titans and his father's oppressive might, Poseidon felt fear. Cronus's towering face radiated immense authority and brutality, and every roar made the earth tremble. "Do you think you can defeat me?" Cronus's voice rumbled like thunder. "I am the embodiment of time, and time will never bow. For a moment, Poseidon's heart wavered. He gripped the trident tightly, feeling its cold touch, as if reminding him that he was no longer that helpless child. He took a deep breath, his gaze hardening. Time may not yield, but fate will choose a new ruler. The Titanomachy raged on for countless days and nights, with Poseidon fighting side by side with his siblings. They fell and rose again and again. In the end, Zeus's thunder shattered the sky, Hades' shadow consumed fear, and Poseidon's trident summoned a cataclysmic tsunami that utterly destroyed Cronus' army. When Cronus was sealed in the abyss, Poseidon stood quietly in the center of the battlefield. His body was covered in wounds, and the trident in his hand dripped with sea water and blood. He gazed out at the distant ocean, feeling an unfamiliar sense of freedom. He realized that this battle had not only changed the world, but also transformed him. He was no longer the imprisoned child, but the master of the sea, the creator of fate. After the war, Cronus was sealed away, and the age of Olympus began. Victory did not bring complete celebration. The three brothers had to face a new problem: how to divide the rule of the world. In their eyes burned ambition, tempered by a sense of caution toward one another. The time had come to cast lots. Zeus's fingers gently twisted the lot container, and Poseidon watched intently, a complex mix of emotions stirring within him. He longed for the vast earth and the sea, for the endless waters that called to his power. But in the end, fate decided his domain, the sea. Poseidon took his domain, feeling both a sense of reluctance and a quiet anticipation. He ascended to the throne of the sea god, and as he wielded the trident, the ocean roared. He felt the pulse of the waves, resonating with the life of the sea. Deep within the ocean, he built a magnificent palace, the sea god's palace, surrounded by coral, pearls, and strange sea creatures. His gaze did not stop at the ocean. He knew that the sea's reach could extend to the land, connecting with mountains and rivers. His power would not be bound by borders. Ruling the sea was no easy task. Although Poseidon possessed immense power, his heart was not always at peace. He often stood upon the waves, gazing at the distant land, pondering his fate. He was proud of his domain, yet felt a slight regret for not ruling over the sky and the underworld. He respected Zeus's rule but harbored an unspoken jealousy. He often asked himself, where do the boundaries of the ocean lie? How far can my rule extend? When the era of Cronus was overthrown and the new order of Olympus began to take shape, the three brothers, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, stood at the top of the power hierarchy. However, as the distribution of power was completed, the outward unity failed to conceal the undercurrents of tension. Zeus's position was as solid as a rock, with his thunderbolts symbolizing supreme authority. Poseidon, who ruled the vast oceans, always felt like a supporting character, forever overshadowed by his younger brother Zeus's brilliance. Poseidon was not a god content with mediocrity. He ruled over the boundless seas, where tumultuous waves and fathomless depths were his domain. Whenever he looked towards the peak of Mount Olympus, a sense of discontent gnawed at him. He knew full well that, despite the ocean's endless expanse, it was always considered a subordinate to the sky. Meanwhile, Zeus, with his thunder and wisdom, easily commanded the awe and allegiance of the gods. Why? Poseidon would often whisper to himself, standing on the undulating sea, with his trident glinting under the sun. His eyes were filled with conflicting emotions. I am not a coward. I have shed blood for this new order and fought alongside Zeus. Why do they remember his thunder, but overlook my waves? The god of the sea was not jealous of Zeus's authority, but he longed to be treated as an equal. His power was enough to cause earthquakes and tidal waves that could shake the very earth. He believed that, compared to Zeus, he simply lacked an opportunity to prove his worth. Poseidon's position was not solely diminished by Zeus's dominance. It was also due to his own personality. Zeus was known for his decisiveness and domineering nature. His ability to control the situation made the gods hesitant to oppose him. Poseidon, on the other hand, though endowed with enormous power, was stubborn and not skilled in diplomacy. His moods, like the ocean, were unpredictable, sometimes calm like a mirror, other times raging like a violent storm. This nature made him somewhat isolated in the divine realm, even though he never ceased his pursuit of recognition. At a grand feast on Olympus, Zeus sat high upon his throne, holding the scepter that symbolized power, surrounded by the adoring gazes of the gods. Meanwhile, Poseidon sat off to the side, holding his golden cup, yet unable to mask the coldness in his heart. He glanced at Zeus, a faint, almost imperceptible smile curling at the corner of his lips. The supreme god king, do you really control everything? The rivalry between Poseidon and Zeus was not only about power, but also extended to matters of the heart. It was well known that Zeus was a lover of pleasure, frequently caught in webs of love and infatuation. However, Poseidon exhibited a unique style in this domain, becoming somewhat of an artist on Olympus. On one occasion, Zeus became infatuated with a beautiful mortal princess. As Zeus plotted how to win her heart with his thunderous might, Poseidon beat him to the punch. Using the romance of the sea and his divine majesty, Poseidon won the princess's affection. It is said that this victory caused Zeus to unleash several lightning bolts in a fit of rage, triggering a violent storm. Meanwhile, Poseidon, comfortably ensconced in his underwater palace, remained unbothered, as though nothing had occurred. My waves may not shine as brightly as your thunder, but they can gently and steadily erode your proud mountaintops, Poseidon once privately told Zeus. His tone was a mixture of pride and challenge. Poseidon was not a simple challenger. He knew he could never take Zeus's throne, but he had his own pride and wisdom. He ruled the oceans, not only protecting fishermen and sailors, but also displaying mercy and strength as a god during times of disaster. His trident was not just a weapon, but a symbol. The ocean is deep and unfathomable, just like Poseidon's wisdom and patience. Perhaps he could never stand at the pinnacle of Olympus like Zeus, but he had already proven his worth in his own domain. Whenever the waves crashed against the rocks and the sea winds brushed against the land, it was the best testament to Poseidon's power and presence. Although the competition never ceased, when the time came, Poseidon and Zeus always stood together. Whether facing the threat of giants or a rebellion from the underworld, They trusted each other and fought side by side. After one great battle, Zeus said to Poseidon, "Brother, my thunder cannot exist without your waves. Without you, I cannot truly control this world." Poseidon was silent for a moment, lifting his trident and gently tapping Zeus's shoulder. He didn't answer, but the complex light in his eyes said it all. There might be competition between brothers, but there was also an unbreakable bond. In the depths of the endless ocean, Poseidon's palace gleams like a dream, with walls paved in pearls, coral-adorned domes, and sea crystal lamps that glow with a blue light, emitting a unique and mysterious beauty. However, despite ruling the entire ocean, Poseidon feels a hint of loneliness. The vast sea is boundless, but without anyone to share its beauty, it feels empty and desolate. The first time Poseidon saw Amphitrite was at the center of a coral reef. She was one of the Nereids, the sea nymphs, moving gracefully like dolphins leaping over waves, her laughter as clear as the sea breeze caressing seashells. She danced on the surface of the sea with her sisters, her long blue-green hair flowing like water, her gaze gentle and lively. Poseidon's gaze was completely captivated by her, and his trident lowered unconsciously. A feeling stirred within him that he had never experienced before, and he knew he must make her his queen. However, Amphitrite did not immediately accept his pursuit. As the ruler of the seas, Poseidon was undoubtedly powerful, but Amphitrite was concerned whether his temper and ambition would make for a stable relationship. But Poseidon did not give up. He had dolphins transformed into messengers to present Amphitrite with the ocean's most precious treasures: rare pearls that glowed with a rainbow of colors, coral flutes that emitted musical sounds, and sea crystal garlands that symbolized eternal love. In the end, Amphitrite was moved by his sincerity and persistence and agreed to become his wife. After their marriage, Poseidon and Amphitrite's love grew deep, and the underwater kingdom flourished. On a tranquil night, Amphitrite gave birth to their son, Triton. The young prince immediately displayed an extraordinary aura. He inherited his father Poseidon's handsome features, with sapphire blue eyes like the purest crystals of the ocean depths. From his mother, he inherited elegance and gentleness, which made him loved by the sea people from a young age. As Triton grew older, he not only showed the same authority and strength as his father Poseidon, but also revealed an amusing sea god inheritance. Triton, much like his father, was obsessed with his appearance, always striving to make his scales shine perfectly, even enjoying contests in the deep sea to see whose hairstyle moved most elegantly with the waves. However, Triton had another inheritance, a love for beautiful women. He often swam between underwater villages and coral reefs, courting mermaids, princesses, and even coral sprites. Every time he appeared, it was like a grand performance, with his dazzling smile and graceful movements winning the hearts of many. He once gave a deep-sea gem to a mermaid and promised her that she could summon him for protection at any time, which made Poseidon sigh helplessly, saying, "This boy can charm people even better than I did when I was young." Triton's name, resembling Disney's King Triton, has led to many misconceptions and later legends. In fact, although Triton was Poseidon's son, he did not focus on ruling the mermaid kingdom like King Triton. He was more like a young adventurer of the sea, loving adventure and exploration, and often challenging the rules his father set. Even so, he remained loyal to his family and duties, always stepping forward to fight when the ocean was threatened, protecting his people without hesitation. Watching Triton grow, Poseidon felt both pride and complexity. He was proud of his son's talent and charm, but also worried that his recklessness might cause him to miss true love and responsibility. He once privately said to Amphitrite, "Triton's charisma surpasses mine when I was young, but will he understand that the true meaning of power and charm lies in protection, not conquest?" Amphitrite smiled and comforted him. "He is our son. He will find his own path. Don't forget, you two were once the most headstrong wave in this sea." Poseidon chuckled lightly, raising his trident and pointing toward the distant horizon. "Perhaps, but I hope his journey has fewer storms." Triton's story continues to be passed down through the ocean, his adventures and romances becoming popular topics among the sea folk. Meanwhile, Poseidon and Amphitrite continue to protect their underwater kingdom, awaiting the day when their son, embraced by the waves, grows into a true heir to the throne of the sea gods. In the family of gods, Poseidon is known as the ruler of the oceans, but his complex and multifaceted nature is fully displayed in his relationship with other deities. His story with his second sister Demeter, in particular, is not only full of turbulent pursuit, but also gives birth to a poignant legend of creation and reconciliation. As a reminder, we previously mentioned Zeus's tumultuous romantic history, including his second sister Demeter, who was also once his wife. Poseidon's infatuation with Demeter dates back to long ago. He was deeply captivated by the calm and elegance of the goddess of agriculture and harvest. Demeter's presence was like the earth itself, steady yet full of life's power. Her gaze was as warm and unapproachable as sunlight on a field. However, Poseidon's love carried the wildness and untamed nature of the sea, which made Demeter feel confused and even uneasy. She was fully aware of her brother's character, passionate, persistent, but also uncontrollable. His pursuit of women was often reckless, and this intense affection seemed to Demeter like a stormy wave, full of danger. In an attempt to escape Poseidon's pursuit, Demeter used her divine powers to transform into a graceful mare and blend it into the herd of horses, hoping to evade his gaze. However, Poseidon was not one to give up easily. He sensed Demeter's disguise and decided to continue the chase in her own form. He transformed into a stallion, his mane flowing like waves, his hooves striking the ground like thunder. He pursued the mare Demeter across vast meadows and rolling hills, until he finally cornered her in a quiet forest. When Demeter was forced to reveal herself, she angrily rebuked Poseidon. "Do you know that your frantic chase will only push me further away? You don't understand what respect and restraint mean." Poseidon lowered his head for a moment, and his eyes flickered with complex emotions. Perhaps he had not realized that his love made her feel oppressed. Despite this, his stubbornness and passion led to an unexpected outcome for the two of them. In the end, Demeter could not escape Poseidon's pursuit, and their union produced an extraordinary offspring, Arion, the divine steed. Arion's birth was astonishing. He was sleek and jet black, with a mane that shone like stars in the night. Wherever his hooves touched the ground, lush plants would spring up. He inherited both the power and wisdom of his parents, becoming the fastest and most powerful horse in Greek mythology, a proud symbol for both gods and heroes. However, the birth of Arion did not completely reconcile Demeter with Poseidon. She still resented his recklessness, but as time passed, she began to see another side of him, the talent of a creator. In an effort to win Demeter's forgiveness, Poseidon decided to create a gift that would make her proud. He harnessed the powers of both the sea and the earth and created the world's first horse. This horse was graceful, powerful, with a mane like waves and hooves as strong as rocks. Poseidon presented it to Demeter and said, "This horse is my gift to you. It symbolizes the power of the earth and the freedom of the sea. May it become a companion to humankind, helping them to plow the fields and traverse mountains." Demeter looked at the horse in silence for a moment. She understood that Poseidon's gift was not merely to please her, but a deep expression of remorse and heartfelt dedication. In the end, she accepted the gift. The story of Poseidon and Demeter began with conflict, but ended in creation and reconciliation. Arion and the first horse became symbols of their relationship, one representing the bond between gods, the other a divine gift to humanity. For Poseidon, this experience marked a turning point. He began to understand that love was not just about pursuit, but required respect and patience. His creativity was seen by more people, and he was no longer just the destroyer of oceans and earthquakes, but the giver of life. Demeter continued to safeguard the fertility of the earth, while Poseidon reflected on this experience from his throne in the ocean. His gaze crossed the waves and looked toward the distant fields, as if still feeling the power and warmth of Demeter. And in the wind, the neigh of Arion echoed, as if carrying an eternal message, that even when storms and the earth oppose each other, love and creation can make them merge. Poseidon, the lord of the seas and master of the trident, possessed boundless power. He once believed that he had conquered all challenges and attained the glory he deserved. However, the divine realm was not ruled only by the dominion of storms and waves, especially when he clashed with Athena. This battle for power became more complex and dramatic than he ever expected. One day, Poseidon stood at the shores of Athens, gazing at the city he had never fully controlled. It lay on the ancient Greek land, full of history and boundless beauty. The city was a symbol of wisdom, the soul of the urban world. Poseidon's heart was filled with longing, a desire to bring this city into his domain, to make it a sacred place protected by the sea god. In the opposite direction, Athena, the embodiment of wisdom and reason, stood coldly watching the city. Her gaze was not as rugged or direct as Poseidon's. It radiated deep thought and intelligence. Thus, the two gods struck a deal. Whoever could bring the people of Athens the most precious gift would be granted the city's guardianship. Poseidon was confident, already imagining himself standing atop the walls of Athens, basking in the glory of ruling over the land. He raised his trident, and in an instant, the waves churned and the tides surged like a roaring beast. After a mighty roar, Poseidon plunged his trident into the earth, and his power pierced deep beneath the sea, splitting the land and shaking the city. Soon after, a giant horse leapt from the sea, galloping at the edge of the city, symbolizing Poseidon's might and majesty. He had brought Athens the first horse, a creature not only magical, but a symbol of power, speed, and conquest. Poseidon's heart swelled with confidence, believing no gift could move the Athenians more than this one. After all, he offered them strength and freedom. However, Athena was not a god to be easily subdued. She stood calmly at a distance, observing Poseidon's actions. She did not rush to act. Her eyes gleamed with a deep light. She understood that wisdom, not mere strength, was what would ensure lasting survival in this world. So, she began to think of how she might win the bet. She lowered her head, and an ingenious idea surged within her. Athena's wisdom was not limited to war and strategy, but also extended to her profound understanding of nature. She approached a bare rock, gently placing her palm upon it. With her touch, an olive tree began to grow quietly, its trunk strong and its branches abundant, exuding a gentle and enduring power. This tree was her gift, symbolizing peace, prosperity, and the power of wisdom. It would not only provide food and wood, but would bring hope and wealth, a symbol of Athens' future prosperity. When Poseidon and Athena presented their gifts to the people of Athens, a deep silence spread. The people marveled at the great power Poseidon had brought, awed by the horse's speed and majesty, but they were also deeply drawn to Athena's olive tree. It was not just a tree, it represented far-reaching impact. It symbolized long-term prosperity and wisdom, a promise of nourishment for the future. The people of Athens knew they were not solely dependent on power to survive, but needed wisdom and resources to achieve lasting happiness and growth. Poseidon's anger surged when he saw Athena triumph. His gaze sharpened, and his trident nearly slipped from his hands. Rage crashed over him like a tidal wave, and he couldn't understand why a tree could be more significant than the strength and power of the horse he had brought. But he also knew that the battle was now beyond return. Athena's wisdom had ultimately triumphed over the fleeting nature of strength. Poseidon felt an unprecedented sense of loss. Though his heart was filled with anger and frustration, he was forced to accept the outcome. He had never doubted his own power, but now he realized that mere strength could not win the guardianship of a city. His heart was filled with a complex mix of feelings: respect for Athena, frustration at his own failure. Poseidon's inner turmoil was deep. He knew he could easily destroy Athens, but he also understood that the future of the city could not be maintained through violence and force, as Athena had demonstrated. Wisdom and foresight were the true supports for the long term. In the end, Poseidon fell silent and accepted his defeat. Among the gods, victory was not always determined by strength, but by wisdom and a long-term vision. Poseidon withdrew his power quietly, gazing at Athena's gentle yet resolute eyes. He sighed deeply, and the fire of his anger slowly ebbed away. Although he had not gained Athens' guardianship, Poseidon did not submit easily. He knew that he was still the master of the seas, with incomparable power, and Athena's victory had given him a new insight. Poseidon, the mighty god of the seas, though a symbol of power, often felt an inexplicable loneliness and frustration among the Olympian gods. This was especially true after his defeat in the contest for the guardianship of Athens, a failure that not only humiliated him, but also stirred deep anger and jealousy within his heart. The contest for Athens ended in Poseidon's defeat, and the beloved horse he had created was taken back. His eyes shimmered with unshed tears, reflecting his bitterness and anger. After all, he had put so much effort into the competition, only to lose to Athena's wisdom and foresight. Although Poseidon outwardly suppressed his fury, inside him, it roiled like a turbulent current in the sea, impossible to calm. It is said that Poseidon could not let go of this defeat, and the anger he harbored only grew with time. Then, in a moment of impulsive fury, Poseidon made a decision that would be the talk of the gods. One day, while visiting Athena's temple, his fury could no longer be contained. He turned his ire towards Medusa, the extraordinarily beautiful woman who had once stirred his heart. However, Medusa had never submitted to him, and this unfulfilled desire gnawed at Poseidon's pride like a sharp blade. In the temple, driven by anger and impulsiveness, Poseidon shamelessly humiliated Medusa. This act of disrespect infuriated Athena, who knew well that Medusa had once been a priestess of her temple. Poseidon's behavior was a blatant provocation. In her wrath, Athena made a terrible decision. She transformed Medusa's beauty into something monstrous. Her once beautiful hair turned into snakes, and the light in her eyes became one of eternal sorrow and rage. Medusa became the terrifying Gorgon, whose gaze could turn anyone to stone. Though Poseidon's anger was temporarily relieved, it brought new chaos to the divine realm. Despite this, Poseidon was not merely a god of impulse and brute force. In another contest, he displayed his rational side. We will revisit the story of Medusa in a future episode, but for now, let us move on. Poseidon was certainly a god of intense emotions, but he was not just a brutish god who relied solely on strength. For instance, at the festival of the god Collins, Poseidon had a fierce argument with Apollo. The festival, which was meant to bring glory and blessings to the gods, became the center of contention when Apollo attempted to seize control, claiming that only his music could bring the gods favor. However, Poseidon, who held the sea's power, was disdainful of Apollo's actions. He understood that the power of the sea was not merely in storms and waves, but also in the deep wisdom and steady sources of life. After a heated exchange, Poseidon did not resort to using his trident to overpower Apollo. Instead, he engaged in a battle of wits, countering Apollo's arguments with his own clever reasoning. In the end, Poseidon triumphed, successfully securing the position of the chief god at the Festival of Collins. In this contest, Poseidon demonstrated his hidden wisdom, proving that he was not merely a god of brute strength and fury, but also one capable of triumphing through intelligence in complex situations. However, the competition among the gods never ceased. Despite Poseidon's occasional frustrations from losing certain contests, he understood that in the face of greater crises, unity among the gods was essential. A prime example of this was during the Gigantomachy, the Great War with Typhon. Typhon, the giant who embodied the storms, possessed thunderous power and nearly destroyed all of Olympus. Even mighty gods like Apollo and Artemis could not stand against him, and many gods fled, hiding far away. Poseidon did not retreat. Despite the formidable foe before him, he stood tall, using his unparalleled power over the sea to battle Typhon in a fierce, long-lasting duel. Poseidon's courage and unyielding spirit in battle were awe-inspiring. His trident and the waves surged like torrents against Typhon, and the collision of the sea's power and the storm's thunder shook the heavens. Despite Poseidon's valiant efforts, he could not defeat Typhon's endless supply of thunder. When Poseidon was finally struck down, close to death, Athena arrived in time to take his place and continue the fight for the survival of the gods. Although Poseidon ultimately failed to defeat Typhon, he still displayed extraordinary bravery and strength in this battle. Perhaps he did not win the final victory, but his determination and courage would forever be etched in the history of Olympus. After the battle, Poseidon was not just seen as a mighty god of the sea, but also as a deity of sacrifice and responsibility. In ancient times, Poseidon's reputation spread across the land, known both for his immense power and his complex, vengeful nature. Many city-states and nations sought his protection, and Troy, once a magnificent city, was no exception. Once, Poseidon had shared a deep alliance with King Laomedon of Troy. Poseidon had helped the Trojans build an impregnable wall, a towering and majestic structure praised as an unbreakable defense, nearly impossible to breach. At the time, Poseidon invested himself in the project with confidence, his power flowing into each stone as if it carried his blessing and hope for Troy. He could feel his strength accumulating with the height of the walls, a sense of pride and might swelling within him. As he looked upon the walls he had crafted, Poseidon couldn't help but feel a deep desire to protect Troy. After all, the city symbolized beauty and glory, deserving of his patronage. However, the royal family of Troy, particularly King Laomedon, seemed to fail to fully understand Poseidon's actions. Despite his role in constructing the walls, Poseidon never received the reward he felt was owed to him. According to the custom between gods and mortals, such a monumental effort in building the walls should have been met with a grand festival and generous offerings. But Laomedon, perhaps overconfident or distracted by other political considerations, overlooked the need to honor Poseidon's contribution. This betrayal lodged itself deep in Poseidon's heart, igniting a fury and resentment that simmered beneath the surface. Though he remained silent at the time, the fire of anger never ceased to burn within him. As time passed, the Trojan War broke out, pitting the Greek alliance against Troy in a battle of life and death. The war was filled with bloodshed and heroism, with warriors clashing on the battlefield and the names of heroes immortalized through generations. But behind the scenes, it was the power of the gods that determined the fate of the conflict. And in that moment, Poseidon found his opportunity for revenge. As the flames of war engulfed Troy, Poseidon felt the anger from his betrayal surge once more. The Trojans seemed unaware that their former ally now stood against them. Poseidon decided to personally destroy the very defenses he had helped build. For him, it was not just revenge. It was a lesson to the Trojans that betraying the gods would come at a devastating cost. Standing deep in the sea, Poseidon gripped his trident, feeling the strength of the waves and the tremors of the earth. Each time he swung the trident, the ocean roared like a beast, and the ground trembled violently. Poseidon let out a furious cry, and the power he unleashed triggered a massive tsunami and earthquake, shaking the entire city of Troy. The walls began to sway and crack, as if the very heavens were mourning the disaster. The once invincible walls, now faced with Poseidon's wrath, crumbled in an instant. The Trojans fled in panic, their once reliable defense now a death trap. The ground split, swallowing the streets, and Poseidon's fury plunged the city into terror and chaos. Watching the walls he had crafted collapse, Poseidon felt a strange sense of satisfaction, but it was bittersweet. Each stone that fell was an act of revenge for the betrayal, and each roar of the waves was a declaration of his anger and ruthlessness. Poseidon calmly looked down on the destruction, his heart in turmoil. His revenge had been swift and violent, but a hollow emptiness lingered within him. Perhaps he had never truly considered whether the victory of revenge could heal the wound of betrayal. Once, he had poured his heart into the city, but now, all that effort had transformed into a force of destruction. He knew that he had not only destroyed the walls, but also the hopes and dreams he once had for Troy. Despite this, the brief satisfaction of revenge provided Poseidon with a fleeting sense of solace. Seeing Troy, once invincible, crumble under his fury, Poseidon realized that his anger had not been in vain. It carried deep meaning. It was a reminder of the dignity of the gods and the punishment for those who dared to betray them. But Poseidon was not content with this alone. His heart still could not forget the betrayal, the cold gaze of King Laomedon. In that moment, Poseidon understood that revenge was not an end, but a process, one that continued to fester and build. His anger would never be extinguished until those who had betrayed the gods were made to pay the price. Poseidon, the Lord of the Sea, was filled with boundless power and awe-inspiring presence, yet he was often torn between anger and reason. His heart held both love and care, as well as an unquenchable fury. Poseidon's revenge against Troy was not merely a simple act of vengeance. It symbolized the eternal conflict between gods and mortals, between respect and betrayal. And in this moment, Poseidon revealed the depth of his complex nature, a god capable of both creation and destruction. Poseidon, one of the three brothers, the ruler of the oceans, and the wielder of the trident. His name is legendary in ancient Greek mythology, carrying with it the power of storms and the sea. He is a god of direct emotions and fiery temperament, rarely hiding his inner world. When enraged, sea monsters appear, the waves rage, and all is devoured. He also has another side, gentle and loving, protecting the people who rely on the sea, guarding coastal towns and ships on long voyages. Poseidon's image evokes both fear and respect. Poseidon's anger is like his sharp, penetrating gaze, capable of igniting the very heavens and earth. When he becomes angry, The sea surges violently, the sky darkens, and sea monsters rise from the depths, clawing and rampaging. Poseidon grips his trident, and with a mighty thrust, the waves crash down like mountains, flooding everything in their path. Every swing of his trident summons a storm. The entire ocean seems to rise and fall under his control, thunder roaring, and the skies resounding with the sound of unrelenting fury. Even more terrifying, when Poseidon violently shakes his trident, the earth trembles, mountains crack, rivers churn, and the ocean floor splits open, releasing a fearsome roar. The shaking of the earth seems like the rage of the ocean spilling over onto the land. He is known as the god of storms and the earth shaker, titles that encapsulate the awe and terror his power commands. Poseidon's fury is never without reason. It is rooted in his insistence on maintaining order, a part of his divine nature. When he sees the people struggling to survive on the sea, he does not hesitate to wield his trident, destroying those who seek to upset the natural balance. However, Poseidon is not merely a wrathful god. Deep within, there is a gentler side to him, one that cares for those who live in harmony with the sea. His kindness and compassion are most evident in his protection of coastal dwellers. He does not enjoy creating disasters for no reason. On the contrary, he prefers to protect those who honor him with open arms. Poseidon loves the coastline, cherishing each fisherman who battles the seas, and he watches over the fishing villages and coastal towns. Whenever the sea is calm, Poseidon transforms into a gentle breeze, caressing the faces of the people and offering comfort. Poseidon's divine power has brought prosperity and peace to those cities that rely on the sea. For example, the cities of Pylos and Dibus, located in the Aegean Sea, are under his protection. The mythical Atlantis also revered him as their chief god. Poseidon used his trident to calm storms, bringing bountiful harvests and peace. Sailors praying for Poseidon's protection find safe passage through the vast ocean, shielded from harsh weather. Poseidon's goodness extends beyond protection. He is also known for his creativity. To win Demeter's favor, he created the first horse. This horse not only became the foundation for human transportation, but also symbolized the development of horsemanship and agriculture. People relied on it for plowing the fields, bringing in abundant crops. Poseidon's creativity didn't stop there. With a wave of his trident, he could summon fresh springs from cracks in the earth, nourishing the land and bringing fertile soil for farming. Poseidon is not just a god of the sea. His divinity spans both ocean and land. His power controls not only the storms of the sea, but also brings hope for abundance on land. Hence, he is also revered as the god of abundance. Poseidon's image is commonly found in ancient artworks. In almost every sculpture or painting, he is depicted riding a golden chariot drawn by white horses, with a majestic presence that seems to consume the very air. His power is immense, and his presence is commanding. When people see the trident glowing, they know it is Poseidon's symbol, the ruler of the seas, the leader of storms. His towering figure, commanding voice, and deep connection to both the ocean and horses make him one of the most recognizable gods in mythology. Despite Poseidon's immense power, capable of controlling both the ocean and the land, he still has a brother who shines even brighter, Zeus. Zeus wields thunder as his weapon and rules the heavens, while Poseidon has never attained the title of the king of the gods. This gap sometimes stirs complex emotions within Poseidon, both reverence for Zeus and a subtle jealousy. He is the most straightforward of the three brothers, never hiding his feelings. No matter how tumultuous his emotions, he reveals them to the world. Poseidon is both the ruler of storms and the ocean and the god of harvest and protection. His power is unmatched, yet he is filled with complex emotions. His story is not just a legend in mythology, but a symbol of the deep connection between humanity and the forces of nature. In Poseidon's world, the ocean's rage and calm coexist, and storms and tenderness are intertwined. No matter how grand his presence, what remains constant is his deep love for the sea, the land, and all living beings. Compared to Zeus's majesty, Poseidon seems more approachable, with a more human touch. His image not only endears him to people, but also imbues the sea with a mysterious attraction. When we think of the sea, the first deity that comes to mind is still Poseidon. Whether in ancient myths or modern pop culture, Poseidon continues to occupy a central place. In fact, in DC movies, the character Mercury can be seen as a modern portrayal of Poseidon, with a role that spans both the ocean and the sky, aligning with Poseidon's identity as the god of the sea. Poseidon's influence on later cultures is deep and far-reaching. For instance, the mysterious and distant planet Neptune in astronomy is named after the Roman god of the sea, Neptune, and its symbol, a powerful trident, is the same as Poseidon's weapon, symbolizing infinite power and the depths of the ocean. Even the Italian luxury car brand Maserati features a trident in its logo, a symbol of Poseidon, conveying the brand's strength and noble character, as though one can feel the vastness of the sea and its invincible aura. Poseidon is more than just the god of the sea in ancient mythology. His image has transcended time and space, deeply rooted in modern culture, and serving as an indelible symbol in the hearts of people. If you enjoy Greek mythology, feel free to leave a comment and let me know which character or myth you love the most. Of course, since you're already asleep, no comment is the best comment. Thank you for listening, and good night with sweet dreams, my sleepy tiger.